I'm Indra,
And I'm Amanda.
and we'd like to welcome you to The Messy Middle Matters. Hey, Amanda, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you today, Indra?
I'm good. I was thinking, have you ever met a librarian who doesn't want to tell you about their library?
No, I've met librarians. I've just
Uh,
never met a librarian who doesn't want to talk about their library.
100%. I follow a couple of different librarians on TikTok, and the things that I find them fascinating, but they share everything. They share
They want to
everything.
share everything.
They want to share everything. And it's so like, there's this generosity that like exudes from them. So like they're really, they seem like they're trying to just create a community, make sure you feel supported, make sure that you're loved, make sure that you get what you need to. I don't know.
Right. Make sure you have the information that you want and need. Make sure that your curiosity is being satisfied.
And they'll tell you things that you didn't even know. They're like, hey, did you know that our library also rents out Jello molds? So you need to buy all your own or whatever. Each library's got this own thing.
That's awesome. I didn't know that libraries rent out Jello
They
molds. So
do.
yeah.
They do. They, like it's nothing that I've taken advantage of, but some of them have like some of my favorite ones are like that I've heard about is where they have like even maker spaces that you can actually go and do things in, and like you can do all sorts of things. You rent out puzzles, you can do a lot of stuff. Like if you want to know a lot of stuff about a lot of things, talk to your local librarian.
Yeah, totally.
But then we've got on the other end of the spectrum, the information hoarders, the people who will not let go of a single thing. They won't, they hold on to it all. It doesn't matter what it is. They just won't talk to you about it. I don't know. Have you ever found anyone like that, whether it's in your personal life or professional life?
Yeah, just people who go around collecting information and like
Mm.
do nothing to share that information with anyone. It's theirs. It's mine, mine, mine.
It's the worst because like I think that the worst moments are you're in a meeting and you've been trying to find X, Y, and Z piece of material for like weeks. You've spoken to everybody that you can in the entire company. And then you're in a meeting and you're talking to your boss, and you're like, hey, I'm completely blocked because I can't find X, Y, and or Z. I can't find any of these things. And your colleague who's been sitting at a desk next to you for all these 3 weeks, much longer than that, says, oh, I know where to find that. You're like, dude.
Right. I know where to find that. And okay, but like, thanks for sharing that information. Can you tell me where to find it? Well,
They are so, I'll say selfish. They're so selfish, but I don't know. That's my impression. Not always, but enough of
not
them.
always. Yeah, I think I've run into people who are unintentional hoarders.
There's that too.
Yeah, of just like, oh, I have this information, I encountered this information, or I did this thing and like I just did it and I didn't document it and like I'm just moving on. Like I'm just so busy and I don't have the time or capacity or even just the thought of, oh, maybe someone else could benefit from this.
100%. Like I think I think that the last thing is what was coming to mind as you were talking is that I sometimes have information. I don't even realize that that's useful. Like
Mhm.
I thought everybody knew. Like it's not I'm not trying to protect it. I just didn't think that others didn't know that. Cool. Now I know to
Right.
share.
Like, didn't everyone get that email? I thought everyone did.
The answer is often enough no, but and then there's folks that land somewhere in the middle. There's folks that, tend to they love to tell you about everything that's in their library, so to speak, but they may not tell you about all the things. Actually, it's not everything. It's they'll tell you about enough of it. They'll tell you about the public programming. They'll tell you about, like what's going on in the in they'll tell you what's going on over the next few days. Maybe when's the next town hall, but there might be some stuff that they hold back. So
Right. Like here, I have a collection of rare books, right? That I'm just gonna keep to myself because that's mine.
100%.
And I'll bust it out for someone who's really interested or who will ask directly about it. Yeah, just there's a piece of that library that isn't like, here you go, here is everything.
And that totally makes sense because, if you're talking about something like a precious book, like if everybody wanted to see the first edition of whatever your favorite book is, I don't know what's popular these days. But then that book could get damaged, that book could get frayed, that book, a lot of things could happen to that book. So you totally, there is something so beautiful about that librarian who wants to share everything. There is something that can be really frustrating with a person who's hoarding information and is keeping their secret stash of their J.R.R. Tolkien first editions all to themselves and don't let them out for, to see the light of day. And then there's like the folks who, will share something, like they might share the most recent publication of the Tolkien books, but might keep that secret one to the side. I mean, I have not read a lot of Tolkien books, but I know there's a lot of collectors of those out there.
Right. Yeah, there's just something to be appreciated and acknowledged about the people who are in that middle space. And I mean, I said middle. This is the messy middle matters. It's that middle space of you have information, but you're not hoarding it for yourself.
Right.
But you're also not like, here's everything. Here's my entire library. And did you know?
It's everything. Yeah, no, 100%. And, like we've mostly spoken about, books and libraries and things like that, but this also applies at work. I mean, we did use some work references in there, but, I think that this behavior in the workplace can be super, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, right? And some people try and wield that power, like the hoarders, I think sometimes do. Or, some people can be constantly sharing information or collecting information, and there is a tax to that. So I don't know. Why don't we talk a little bit about our information hoarders and some of the experiences that we've had in the workplace? I mean, I've got some examples. I've got one from many moons ago that just like sticks with me to this day.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I've got an example in mind too.
do it.
This has happened a few times, right? There's a person, we'll call them a lead, right? There's a lead of a team who demands to be included on every meeting, demands to be included on every email, copied on every communication, who like needs to have all of the information about, we'll call it a project, right? Yep. All of the information, all of the details. And I think that form of micromanagement comes from a place of fear of like, oh, I need this information. And if I don't have this information, I don't have that power, right? I don't have that information currency to hold my position or like keep my job.
Yeah. Totally. Like it's so funny that you say that. Like, and it can be a complicated thing. Like I think about, I'm trying to think about, I have an example, but I'm just as riffing off of what you said. Like I try and think of my own tendencies. Like when I'm leading a team, especially in a workplace where knowledge is constantly power. Like I think my favorite line to try and avoid being that person is just really say, hey, can you CC me on everything? I promise you I'm not going to lurk. I just need to be able to search it when I need to find it in my inbox when somebody asks about it. But that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about the person who really just wants to be in the middle of it all. Like they feel the need to be in the middle of it all. And yeah.
Right. They have to gatekeep that information. And I think there's a piece of it just going back to the term of hoarder, right? Like you have this information and you're also not doing anything to share this information. You're keeping it to yourself. You're being selfish about it because of reasons, right? Whatever your motivations might be.
Yeah. And I think that the other behavior that I often see in this scenario is where the person, like, let's say they have a team of 5 people, just for the sake of illustration, they make sure that those 5 people aren't really sharing information with each other and are only sharing information with lead, right? So lead person doesn't want the teams to talk to each other. They want to be the only person who has eyes on all 5 different streams, right? Which is its own version of like, they're compartmentalizing for the sake of it. And guess what? Neither Amanda nor I have worked in a place where nuclear secrets are being shared. So we didn't need to be able to fork all that, divide all that information in that sort of way. But yeah, there is that.
Right. That person in this scenario that you just described is a bottleneck, right? They're the bottleneck. It's not healthy. It's not productive. It's just Why are you being this gatekeeper? Why are you being the only person who's wielding this information?
And I think you nailed it. It's fear. It's
Mhm.
fear and the perception of power, which leads to my example. Like years and years ago, it was the early aughts, and I was working as a programmer, and we're doing automated publishing of all things. But the company that I was working for was struggling. It was after the dot-com bust, right? They're struggling to make ends meet, and the lead of the team, he was hoarding some information specifically on how to compile and deploy the code, right? And
Job security?
he thought it was job security. He thought, and that was his express motivation, was job security. And we did inevitably have team cuts. And guess what? It didn't help him with his job security. It was, he may have been super talented. He may have been really capable. He may have been a lot of different things. But, I would guess I was not in the decision making process, but I would guess that, in addition to him being probably a higher paid employee, right? That might have been a factor in this. I don't know. But the fact is that when you have an employee who is feel that you feel like they're holding your code and your releases hostage, it's not a great feeling for a leadership. So like I don't know if it's a great way to ingratiate yourself to the people who actually make the decisions about who stays and who goes. So
Yeah. And I think, it's that job security and that coming from a place of fear, you're not actually protecting yourself. I think
mm-mm.
that's a really hard fact to come to come to terms with if you're that person.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the term that comes to mind is a scarcity mindset, right?
Yes. Yes.
I think that might be a topic that we add to our backlog of scarcity versus an abundance mindset, right? But when you think that there's only so much to go around, you're more likely to lead into those hoarding activities. But not something I aspire to, something that I clearly avoid. I know, Amanda, you actively avoid trying to get into that kind of space too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like information. I need
yeah.
information, like
Mm-hmm.
just the nature of what I've done as a career. Like, I need information, but I'm not going to be the one to keep all that information and be the only one who has that information. Again, like we talked about earlier, that middle space of like, I
Yeah.
have this information, but I'm going to be, I'm going to keep my rare books in the
Yeah,
corner
yeah,
for like
yeah,
when
yeah,
I
yeah,
need
yeah, yeah.
it.
Totally, 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 totally. I love that you and I, we always wind up back in the middle. We always wind up back in the middle. But let's talk about the other end of this extreme. Like there are, sometimes I refer to myself as a scavenger of information. Like I'm the
Yeah.
person who's like I will seek out every possible corner of every intranet, extranet, whatever we can find to figure out what something means. And a librarian might do the same type of thing, make sure everything that's in their collection, like I want to understand so that I can help everyone else, just running around and scurrying around. It's not the intention, the energy that I'm thinking of when I think of like this librarian archetype isn't somebody who's trying to scavenge just for themselves or collect for themselves, or they're really just collecting because they want to be able to help others with this knowledge and information.
Right. Going back to the librarian metaphor, right?
Mhm.
Like building that community, like building that space with
Yes.
the things that are useful to all.
Yes. And there's more of like this we kind of thinking.
Mhm.
Like it's a we we. I don't know. Sometimes I don't enunciate as clearly as I'd like to, but like, yeah, it's about the greater good. It's about the greater good because libraries serve communities. I mean, that's sort of why we were thinking of this metaphor. Like libraries are there, they're the cornerstone of communities, and they're more likely to share information if you're in a library versus, let's say, a bookstore. We need to buy the information, right? That's sort of another version
Right.
of gatekeeping, right? But I love a metaphor, folks. You'll have to apologize. I have to apologize. So sorry. But they're more likely to share. There's a generosity thing, and I think that my favorite thing that I so there's a couple of things that come to mind, when I'm thinking about being in librarian mode. Like The reality of it is that most of my career has not had a lot of authority. It's had a lot of influence. And, early on, somebody taught me the lesson like, Andrew, you're in the business of favors. You have no control over anyone else. You need to collect a bunch of favors. I'm like, okay. And one of the ways that I collect favors, not as a mobster who's like, you owe me one. I'm from New Jersey, but not I don't live up to that stereotype. I live up to a lot of other ones, um, it's really about collecting that so that someday maybe you can get that person to help you, and they're more likely to help you in the future when you need help. So there is this, building of goodwill, building of camaraderie, building of trust that happens when you do share information when people really need it.
Yeah, the building of goodwill, like those were the words that popped into my
Mm,
brain. It's that goodwill, it's that community, the feeling of trust. And it's modeling good behavior, right? Like I'm going
yes.
to share this with you because I think it's useful to you and to us and to we, the community. And by doing that, I'm showing you that it's okay and encouraged for you to do the same. Like if you come across information that you think is helpful for the team,
Yeah.
like please share it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like it is that it's I'm glad that you went there. It's the you know, I'm going to share it with you. My expectations that you share it with somebody else and or contribute to the knowledge when you have it, and just like I said, fostering it, or even in a meeting, be like somebody brings up a good piece of fantastic. Thank you for sharing that bit of information. Can you please add it to the team wiki or the team Slack channel or the team whatever the knowledge repository is for that team, and modeling that behavior I think is so important, and encouraging that behavior is so important.
Yeah, I think that was a callback to our Words Matter episode of like
Mm.
creating this glossary, right?
I love a glossary.
Creating the glossary for the benefit of the community. Like this is important for others, and we're going to share it with you.
Yeah. But I'd say, one of the things that I've experienced when I'm too far into librarian mode, right, is that my proverbial doorbell never stops ringing. Everyone's like, hey, Indra, where's the this? Hey, Indra, where's the that? Hey, Indra, where's the this? How Indra? Like, it can be exhausting when
Yeah,
everybody thinks of you as that center of knowledge and you become a
right.
bottleneck, which is even besides being exhausted, you feel like you're a choke point on communication, which feels even worse than
Right. It's the other side. It's not, I was going to say dark side, but it's not really the dark side, right? It's
that.
the other side
Yeah.
of having information. It's
Mhm.
when you model yourself to be that person, to be the librarian, right? Like you show others that you are the librarian, that you have information. That may cause people to expect that information from you. And that's not always the case. Or maybe you do have that information, but you're not open 24/7 to share everything. Hey, Indra, what about this? Do you know anything about that? It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And some of the stuff doesn't even require like knowledge. They just want to talk to someone.
Yeah.
They'll be like, "Hey, I was just thinking." You become that. Well, maybe being colleagues, pseudo therapists is another topic for another day. But you kind of feel that way. But which actually brings us to the middle. There's somewhere there is a happy medium. You're talking about it a little bit earlier. There's a happy medium between hoarding information and being the person that everyone turns to for absolutely every bit of knowledge that's out there, right? For the most extreme version of the librarian, I love invoking the like 80, some version of the 80-20 rule. It's a very, common ratio that gets thrown around in life and in business. But I've worked really hard to figure out like how do I create the boundaries so that I don't get exhausted, because I have been that person. Like if I look back at my performance reviews, which I'm sure I have on some drive somewhere, they're like, Indra, boundaries. You're really helpful, but you need some boundaries. So
Yeah.
I don't know. You're Amanda, you're fantastic at drawing boundaries around things. I don't
I
know.
try to be. It's a work in progress, but
Fair.
yeah, I try to be because without boundaries, you just burn yourself out.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good segue to if you're watching the video, we have matching sweatshirts that say, "Don't make me regret trying to be helpful."
Yeah. Yeah. This is evidence of a time and place when Amanda and I were like, we need to draw more boundaries and we need a physical reminder.
Right. Do you want to tell the story, Indra? These were your words.
These are my words. These are my words. I can tell this story, but you'll tell me if I got it right or wrong because memories around these things can be a little bit fuzzy. But
Yeah, I don't even remember what the specifics were, and maybe you do.
no,
I just remember that these were your words, and our whole team was like, that needs to go on a shirt.
and yeah, and I made sure my whole team had got the sweatshirt that says "Don't make me regret trying to be helpful." So we were going through. It was a challenging time in the company that we were working at. It was a challenging time, but this scenario, if I'm remembering correctly, it was like November, December timeframe. I think that it had to do with getting like year-end reviews or year-end reflections or something around year-end processes into a system. And anyone who's worked in a company with HR who has these review processes knows that there's like really hard deadlines. It's kind of the same as like open enrollment for health benefits. Like there's a hard deadline, you need to get it done, and if you don't get it done, you're going to have some problems that you're
Right,
going
you're
to
going
have
to
to
be locked out
face.
of the system. Like you actually cannot do anything after the deadline.
Right. And, let's say it was self-reflections for a year-end review, which is what I think it was. Like you won't be able to use your words to advocate for your year-end bonus or a potential promotion or anything else. Like, so there's a reason that, everybody might want to get their thing in, right? Um, And so we'd received multiple emails. I think I saw there was an email and there may have even been a Slack message in one of the big giant channels for all the employees in the company that went out. And because I've worked with human beings long enough to know that they don't always catch everything, I took the message, I took a snippet of it, and I posted it in our teams. We were working for an engine, we were supporting an engineering team. We posted it in the Slack channel. I'm like, hey folks, by the way, don't know if you noticed that, your emails or you were paying attention to the Slack channel, but the deadline for X, Y, and Z is next Wednesday. And because I've been around the block a few times, I said, I don't have any further answers to any questions related to this. It's not my process. I don't know anything. Check your email, check in with our HR partner to find out if you have any sort of questions. If you do, read the email first, check with them second. The number of at Indra direct messages that I got, or like in thread in the thing, Indra, how do I do it? Indra, why is it this way? Indra, why I hate that form field. Indra. I was like, folks, I
Right.
was trying to be helpful here. I was trying to make sure that you all saw there was a deadline. And I told you, I don't know anything more about this than is written in that email.
Right. Like I'm just the messenger. I'm so sorry. I don't have the information for you, but I told you this.
Oh my gosh, but it was actually evidence that they were looking for the librarian who's going to sit them down, give them a cookie, you know, make sure that they eat their vegetables for them, right? Not even make a smoothie for them, eat their vegetables for them. I'm like, I can't do this and I don't have any answers.
Right. You were trying to be the helpful librarian and say, hey, this is important information for you all to know. Not sure if you saw it in the stacks and stacks of books we have, but I'm calling it out for you. I don't know anything else about this, but like there's action to be taken. There are other ways to find this information. If you like, I don't know anything. Please don't ask me. I.e., don't make me regret trying to be helpful.
Don't make me regret trying to be helpful, folks. And one thing I do not regret is having sweatshirts made for the entire team. Everyone got to choose their particular cut and whatever, and maybe someday when we do merch, if people really have a desire for "Don't make me regret trying to be helpful," we might do that. Have them up for people so everyone else can join in on the silliness of fun. But it's so true. Every workplace that I've worn it at, like on a meeting, so they're like, "Oh, that's funny." I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "I see why you wear it." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, same. I think every meeting I've worn this sweatshirt too when I'm on camera. There have been people either messaging me or even saying on the meeting, wow, your shirt's great. Where can I get
Where can you
one?
get one? So, I mean, you know, I'd love to talk about like the things that help you, that have worked for you to get back into that middle, because I think, extreme on anything never really works, right? Life is mostly spent in the middle. Life is mostly spent in the gray. Life is rarely black and white. And for folks who are on one end of the spectrum or the other, I think that our audience is less likely to actually be on that hoarder side. They're probably more likely to be on the librarian side, and they're getting overwhelmed. They feel like they feel like the image that always comes to mind is like Lucy from the Peanuts. Like, I love her advice for 5 cents thing. But it's like, but Lucy, sometimes I felt like Lucy without a booth, without any sort of hours. Like, it was just a booth that was expected to always be open. But
Right. Right.
I
This
don't know.
isn't 7-Eleven. We're not open, 24 hours a day in the middle of the night for you to come in and get
No.
whatever you need. There's, yeah, I love that you brought up Lucy because there's a just immediate image in my brain, right,
Mm.
of Lucy at her booth, like, 5 cents. And this is when she's at her booth, and this is when she's available to give advice. And when she's not at her booth, that's it. You don't get advice.
And if you don't have the 5 cents, you don't get advice either.
Right.
There has to be
It's yeah,
something in
and
it. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just setting that boundary and an expectation for yourself and for others.
And it can be exhausting. Sometimes one of the things that I still remember exactly my people manager at the time when I was learning the skill the hard way was, you know, I would say, and he's like, Indra, you need to set more boundaries. I'm like, yeah, but it's easier for me to do it for them than it is for me to teach them, like, to constantly have to remind them to go to the wiki to get the information themselves.
Yeah.
He's like, Indra, he's like, I on a per transaction basis, you're right. But over the course of time, you're just never gonna stop. The only way you can stop it is to put in that little bit of extra effort now so that they actually start doing it themselves.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's great advice for the librarians of the world who either are exhausted or on their way to getting exhausted and
Mhm.
burnt out by being the keeper of information and by whether intentionally or unintentionally building that reputation for themselves that they are the information library. I also think there's some guidance that we can give for, like you said, are the people who listen to this probably aren't hoarders, at
Probably
least
not.
not intentionally, right?
Not
Like
exactly. Yeah.
at the beginning of our conversation, I talked about the unintentional hoarding.
Mhm.
So if you feel like maybe you are a bit of an unintentional hoarder, where you don't share information either because you're too busy or whatever the reason may be, I would invite everyone to just do a little bit of self-reflection
Mm.
and figure out, like, is there information that I come across, or like are there things that I do that others can benefit from for the greater good to be a little bit more of a librarian.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I was also thinking about like a lot of, when onboarding a new team member who is in a program management or an operations role, like the default behavior for a large chunk of those folks um, tends to be, I want to prove myself to be useful so people come to me because I know I'm in the business of favors. Right. So like that's the energy that you lead with. And that is the way that you often get, you ingratiate yourself to the teams that you're supporting. So they do invite you to meetings. They do see the value in you. But, I think that asking yourself, doing that reflection you're talking about, Amanda, on a periodic basis, like, let's say you are brand new to the organization, like, you know, um, maybe every month, like, okay, I'm being that person to get pulled in. Is it too far yet?
Right.
Is it too far yet? Like, create they put something on your calendar that like has you do that self reflection to say, hey, is this the moment in time where I back off? And, it can be scary to back off because, will they still love you? Will they still invite you if you're not constantly answering the questions? Spoiler, yes, probably. The odds are good.
Yeah,
If you're doing your
probably
job well,
yes.
probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a part of what you just said that struck the idea of, again, a scarcity mindset, right?
Mm,
And that fear, that motivation, being motivated by fear. And it's like, no, you can let go of some of that. You can let
yeah.
go of some of that, or you can pull back. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Or if it's not fine, this is probably not the reason why it's not fine. Cause I think that when you were just talking about fear and scarcity, I'm thinking about a lot of people are looking for roles right now, or they watched a lot of friends exit or be exited from their organization. And you feel a little like, oh my gosh, I need to prove myself even more. Like, take a breath. You need to take care of yourself and not having the answer for everyone at every single moment. That's not the thing that's going to make that decision. Like I was saying, that person who was trying to hold on to that code so tightly, like there's no one behavior that leads in. I mean, sometimes there's something terribly egregious, but generally speaking, for most human beings, there isn't one behavior that goes into deciding whether or not, you are the person who retains their role or doesn't retain their role. So I just want to acknowledge this moment in time that we're living in right now, because some of our listeners might be in that scenario. And I just want to, you still need to protect yourself. There are things that matter much more than anything else, and your well-being, which is what can happen if you are too generous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. What can happen when you're too generous and you burn yourself out? Burnout is real.
Burnout is really real.
That's
Really
that's a
real.
whole other topic.
That's a glass of wine topic. We should actually start adding glasses of wine next to the topics. We're like, oh, those are the ones that we might, those are the harder ones. Those are the big feeling topics. Any other thoughts and things and suggestions that you can offer some of our listeners?
No, I think we covered it well. I like that we came up with this metaphor and stuck with it of the library and the librarian.
We worked hard on that metaphor. We worked hard
Yeah.
on that metaphor. And
We
I
love a good metaphor.
love a good metaphor. Metaphors are useful as long as everyone else knows what they are. Well, maybe that's a topic for another day too, when to use metaphors, but they're so useful for explaining something that's really complicated. The one thing, as you're saying, hadn't thought of this before. The last little bit of advice: laughter. Have a
Yes.
little humor with it all. Like, when I'm setting a boundary, if I make it funny, people will start laughing like, oh yeah, that's really silly. I'm like, did you ask you ask me this every single time I have an automated email that send you the information every single month because I know what time you're doing this. You don't need to ask me anymore. Like you laugh a little, like laughter will get through a lot of this too. It helps with the letting go. So
Right. The don't make me regret how to be trying to be helpful sweatshirts. I think everyone who sees this laughs at first. They're just like, "Oh, haha, that's actually really good."
even the people who were frustrating me at that moment, they're like, I know why I know why you got that. So I'm like, I know. I'm
Right.
like you should get like, some credit for this. And they laugh because we need to learn how to laugh at ourselves. We need to learn how to laugh at ourselves more in life. But anyway,
Yeah.
Amanda, as always, I am grateful to have you as a partner in crime in this. This is fun. This is fun for us. Hopefully it's fun for our listeners. Hopefully everybody gets a little something out of it. I know I get something out of every single episode. So thank you to you. Thank you to everyone who listened. And I hope y'all join us again next time when we visit another topic from the messy middle. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.